Are you quite comfortable, Miss Derwent?
Perfectly, thank you, Dr. Watson.
Oh, now, a cushion, perhaps.
Watson, kindly cease fussing.
Had this account been committed to paper at the time,
This young lady's services would not have been required, nor her comfort your concern.
Publication was expressly forbidden until recently. Permission has only just been received. But nowadays, you know, a touch of arthritis is...
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Oh, Dr. Watson is my boss.
Well, now, the events which follow took place just before the Great War. Europe was still at peace. But had it not been for Sherlock Holmes, England would have suffered such an appalling catastrophe during that war as to bring her to the very brink of defeat and surrender. It began when two alert river police constables saw something. The object which had attracted their attention proved to be the body of a man trapped between two crossed timbers of an abandoned wharf. With some difficulty, they contrived to dislodge the corpse and drag it into the boat.
Give me a hand. Come on.
He seemed to be no more than just another unfortunate victim of the river. But his face, it could only be described as that of a man who had witnessed some unimaginable, terrible evil. MacDonald, Scotland Yard, always an able and devoted police officer, had by then, of course, achieved national fame.
Come in, MacDonald. You are as prompt as ever, Mr. Mac.
And your hearing as keen, sir. Dr. Watson, a pleasure.
Watson was kind enough to call and see me. I am not often in London these days.
Holmes prefers the life of a hermit in Sussex, studying the habits of his bees.
Oh, fascinating creatures. I watch them as once I watched the criminal world of London.
But you had business to discuss.
Unless you have some other more pressing engagement. Please stay, Doctor.
I should be glad to do so.
Sit down, then. You know how much I always value your opinion. Well, MacDonald, your voice on the telephone conveyed some degree of concern.
In the past, I have never hesitated to consult you when in some difficulty, Mr. Holmes.
Mediocrity knows nothing higher than itself. You have talent, MacDonald.
Oh, not sufficient in this case, sir.
The light is failing, Watson. Would you be so kind as to light the lamps? Well, now, what is this difficulty which confronts you?
3 corpses, sir.
Well?
One was taken from the river.
Well, the Thames claims many victims. The other 2?
Found dead in Whitechapel.
In a cruel world, the poor often die. What is singular about this?
The faces, well, as to that you may see for yourself. But the surgeon examined the bodies most carefully. There were no signs of any disease, and not a mark on any of them.
Well, no one dies without cause, Mr. Mack.
I assure you, sir, there was absolutely no visible cause of death whatsoever.
25 years of age or so. The facial expression, most singular. You did not exaggerate, MacDonald.
A beggar, judging by his wretched clothes and appearance, in the habit, I would say, of sleeping rough.
Found dead in an alleyway where he had slept on a grating. The point is marked on this map.
Strange beggarman, Watson. His flesh is firm. His body not that of a man who ever went hungry.
He was a professional beggar, sir, who worked this district, among others. Some say he had a comfortable room in Kilburn to which he returned at intervals. But little is known about him. He did not mix with the other poor wretches.
And you say the other two bodies have been buried?
They were found at intervals over a period.
It might have been of some small assistance had I been given the opportunity to compare them.
Unexplained deaths are far from rare in this part of London, Mr. Holmes. The local police informed me, but I was engaged in investigating a series of child murders. It was only when this one was found, the third similar death, that I realized...
Yes, quite so. But you saw the other two?
Yes, they could be exhumed if you wish.
Describe them in order.
The first was a young working man, respectably dressed. His body was trapped between two timbers under a wharf here. But he had not drowned. The surgeon found no water in his lungs. He was dead before he entered the water. But since there was no apparent cause of death...
The Thames is a tidal river. The entry into the waters could have happened anywhere.
Did his identity not offer some clue?
His identity is unknown.
What? Nothing in his pockets, no personal possessions?
None.
And that did not strike you as curious?
It did, but as I have explained...
No one came forward? No friend? No relative?
No one.
The second victim?
A homeless down and out. Found dead in a disused basement here.
Well, that's not all that far from the grating where this one was discovered.
The same area, sir, but a tidy walk along this maze of alleyways. I have paced the ground.
And you are positive that the facial expressions of all three were...
The same, Mr. Holmes.
The same.
Holmes, I am reminded...
Of what, Doctor?
During my service in Afghanistan, I saw many poor fellows dead. A few, wore such looks. Fear, Holmes. Terror. I speak of those captured by the enemy tribesmen and who died in agony.
But fear of what? Some person, some thing, death itself?
Some dread disease seemed one possible answer, but the surgeon thinks not.
Watson, is there some odor, the slightest trace one would not expect? Perhaps not, imagination. But the mucous membrane, Doctor, do you detect a very slight discoloration?
Trifles swollen, perhaps. One cannot be certain.
We have a swab. When I have finished with this fellow MacDonald, with your permission, I shall examine the place where he was found.
Oh, of course, sir. Although...
Oh, I shall not require your presence, Mr. Mack.
Once Holmes had completed a full examination of the body, we made our way to Whitechapel, where the body had been found. It was a grim, deserted place. The threat of attack, of violence, hung in the very air. I was pleased, just the same, to be joined with Holmes once more, although I devoutly wished this strange case could have taken us to more salubrious surroundings. We approached the grating where the beggar man had died. On it lay a heap of filthy sacking. Holmes was about to push the sacking aside when he paused. Underneath lay the wreck of a human being, one of the most pathetic creatures I had ever seen.
Can you sit up, my friend? Do you have a name? We mean you no harm. We are not the police. Do you spend many nights here?
He's too soaked in alcohol to answer you.
The contrary is the reason, Watson. He has none. Do you have a name?
Coombs. Alfred Coombs. Evil stalks this land. Repent, I say, or face eternal damnation. Repent before the devil claims your soul.
Do you often sleep in this place?
If he's not here,
Who?
he claimed it. He kicked me aside as if I was a dog. But he was punished for his sins.
How?
By burning in hell till all eternity. They took him.
Did you see this?
I've seen them. I know. Fear the Lord and repent, I say.
And who are they?
Demons! Devils incarnate! Bodies of men, but faces of pigs. They got holes for eyes and snouts for noses. The devils from hell! Devils. The evil ones in search of evil.
Come, Watson. There'll be a cold supper waiting for us.
We left the poor demented fellow to find what peace he could. Holmes! Holmes, I do really think... Holmes had become obsessed with the case. One evening, I had been to my club, and on my return... Holmes, what on earth?
Close the door, man. Quickly, quickly. The draft. The temperature is critical. First, I attempted an analysis.
Of what?
The swab I took from the body in the mortuary, of course. But without success. This is infuriating, Watson. I am certain there is a trace of some chemical substance unknown to me. Now, all day I have tried to reproduce it, but... Oh, not now, Mrs. Hudson.
I must speak to you, Mr. Holmes.
I told you I did not wish to be disturbed under any circumstances.
I'm sorry, but Oh, Mr. Holmes, I did hope all this was done with. I fear for my very life.
There will be no explosion, Mrs. Hudson. I promise you. Now, having entered without permission, kindly withdraw.
There are two gentlemen downstairs to see you.
Then send them away.
I can't, Mr. Holmes. One of them is the Home Secretary, in person. He insists on seeing you on a matter of great urgency.
Very well. Give me a few moments and then show them up. A wasted day, Watson. You once took the liberty of informing me, I recall, that my knowledge of chemistry was eccentric.
Well, on another occasion, I referred to it as profound.
Not so today, I fear.
Holmes?
Hmm? And yet I am close, Watson. I know it, I can feel it, but I cannot make the final connection. I cannot grasp it. It remains out of my reach.
What is the it to which you frequently refer?
The truth, Doctor. Come in.
The Home Secretary and another gentleman, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
Pleasure to see you again, Mr. Holmes.
Most kind of you to call. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson, who is occasionally good enough to help me in my cases.
Dr. Watson.
Home Secretary?
May I introduce Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson?
Doctor, it is a great honor to meet the detective who stands alone in Europe, both in his gifts and in his experience.
Whom have I the honor to address?
Until we know if you will assist us, it is better if I remain unknown to you. Your Home Secretary will vouch for me.
The situation is extremely delicate, Mr. Holmes.
Pray be seated. Do I take it that the problem is yours?
It concerns us all, Mr. Holmes. I should very much prefer to communicate with you alone.
Oh, of course, sir. Kindly say, Watson, if you please. It is both or none. You may say before this gentleman anything which you may say to me.
Then I must begin by binding you both to absolute secrecy.
It is not my custom to betray a confidence.
Nor mine.
Ominous dark clouds hang over Europe. There's even talk of war. Kaiser Wilhelm's intentions are misunderstood. In the interests of peace, arrangements were made for someone of great importance to be brought to this country.
Might I inquire what connection you might have with this person of great importance?
I occupy a position of trust.
Position of trust? Well, that is very interesting.
With the permission, Mr. Holmes, I shall proceed to the core of the matter.
Be good enough to indulge me for one moment. Watson, kindly look up a certain gentleman in my index. His name is Graf Udo von Helsing.
Mr. Holmes, I feel I must intervene.
Your intervention will be most welcome later, Home Secretary. Doctor?
Von Helsing, Graf Udo, distantly related to Kaiser Wilhelm. Varied career, soldier, diplomat, scientist. Educated Potsdam, Heidelberg, Oxford. Fencing blue. Clubs, White's London.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, now that an introduction has been effected, Graf von Helsing?
I can only apologize, Mr. Holmes. I'm in a most difficult position.
I am in agreement with that. You appear to be engaged in discussions which are properly the province of the Foreign Secretary.
The cabinet are not of one mind. Most of them believe that war is inevitable. I do not. We must have peace with Germany, Mr. Holmes. And to that end, I bring whatever influence I have to bear.
Germany may have peace.
Our talks are private and confidential. Graf von Helsing is a private person.
May I inquire how you knew, Mr. Holmes? Despite my flattering appearance in your index, I'm not a public figure.
Oh, you were never photographed for the press, to my knowledge, it is true, but there was no magic involved. As usual, the explanation is simplicity itself. I once had the privilege of attending a lecture you gave in Heidelberg when we were both much younger men.
I wish you had made yourself known, Mr. Holmes.
Given that you enjoyed the good offices of Graf von Helsing, why was the presence of this other personage of great importance thought necessary?
None could doubt that he spoke for the Kaiser himself.
I see. Proceed.
Traveling incognito, he arrived by the night ferry at New Haven on Wednesday. My chauffeur met him and drove him to my country house, where he retired to his room.
The following morning, he had vanished. Disappeared, Mr. Holmes, without a trace.
Then I shall give you my advice. Report the matter to the police without further delay.
That's impossible.
Holmes, if it became known that the young gentleman came to England and was abducted, it would precipitate precisely the conflict it was designed to avoid.
It could well lead to war.
Someone of great importance indeed. A prince of the royal blood, I suggest.
And he must be found. And it is essential that the investigation be carried out in absolute secrecy. That is why we have turned to you, Mr. Holmes. There is no one else.
I find myself in a difficulty. I am engaged on another case.
I thought you retired.
An old acquaintance has asked for my assistance.
Oh. May I know for whom you're acting?
I have been consulted by MacDonald of Scotland Yard.
The Metropolitan Police are responsible to me. I'm in a position to relieve you of your obligation. Surely that will discharge the matter.
Please, Mr. Holmes, I beg you.
I urge you to remember what is at stake, Holmes. You can return to MacDonald's case later. It cannot be as vital as this one. Find the young man first.
Very well.
Thank God.
Germany will be eternally in your debt, Mr. Holmes. My card.
Thank you.
My chauffeur will meet the train departing at Marylebone at noon tomorrow. Will that be convenient?
Perfectly. Gentlemen, I bid you good night.
Good night, Mr. Holmes.
Our Home Secretary is a fair and decent man of honorable intent.
Peace is a noble aim, Holmes. No sane man wants war.
That is the trouble, Watson. There are otherwise sane men who do want war. If what we have heard tonight is correct in every particular, and this distinguished young personage has been abducted, then it would seem to be a deliberate plot. A plot to engineer war between England and Germany. As to that, I shall know more when I have the answers to some telegrams I must send.
Well, I shall pray for your success in this enterprise. Good night, Holmes.
Watson, would you be prepared to come with me to Buckinghamshire?
Of course. I should be delighted.
I'm lost without my boss. You are my only friend, Watson. You have such a grand gift of silence.
I shall pack now.
This is a deep business, Watson. So, Burbridge.
It seemed idyllic. The air refreshingly clean after that of London. And yet I knew from our past experiences what hidden wickedness might lurk in the midst of such pastoral peace. And for some reason found myself in the grip of a peculiar apprehension. Surely it must be mere imagination. Yet I could not shake it off. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
However, at least we were able to complete our journey in the most agreeable comfort. While the house was a delight to the eye, Graf von Helsing was surprised to see me.
Thank you.
You are indeed welcome, Mr. Holmes.
Why, thank you.
You too, Dr. Watson.
Thank you.
Delighted. May I present my son, Anton?
How do you do?
How do you do?
I thought it likely you'd wish to occupy this room, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you.
Another one will be prepared for Dr. Watson.
We were obliged to force the lock when the valet could obtain no reply.
He's a trusted servant, sworn to secrecy. Will answer any questions when he has unpacked for you.
Later will do for both. It was locked from the inside.
Yes.
And the key?
Everything has been left exactly as it was. The bed had not been slept in.
Clothes?
Those he traveled in had gone except for his boots. He must have changed into shoes.
The remainder?
They're still in the wardrobe and the chest of drawers.
You have guests?
Mm-hmm. They were here when the young man disappeared.
For what purpose?
I have many English friends, Mr. Holmes. They have not been told what happened, of course.
Were they aware that this personage was arriving?
I'm confident they could not have known. His visit was arranged in complete secrecy. Nevertheless, I suppose you would wish to speak to them discreetly. Hmm?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Some telegrams arrived for you, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes, you will agree that your real purpose here must remain a closely guarded secret. With your permission, therefore, I shall explain your presence here merely as a friend and distinguished guest. If you would care to accompany me now?
First, I must examine every aspect of this room and its contents. I shall also need a photograph of the young man. And now, if you please, Dr. Watson will go with you.
Please, Doctor.
I determined to observe every suspicious detail of von Felsick's guests, as Holmes himself would have done.
It is very fine indeed.
Odo knows it, Sherry. I'll say that for him.
Dr. Watson, my good friend Frederick Baines.
Mr. Baines?
Good to meet you, Doctor. Here to drum up a few more patients, are you?
Mr. Baines is a shipping magnate.
Finest fleet of cargo ships in England, built up from nothing.
May I present Dr. Watson, Lord and Lady Claremont.
How do you do?
Madam, sir.
Rupert, I've been looking for you. How about some more rough shooting sometime?
Why not?
That's if you can let him off the leash for a few hours, Cynthia.
Lord Claremont and his wife Cynthia are not long married. He has outlived 2 wives so far. Immensely rich, one of the greatest landowners in England, much influence in the House of Lords. And here's my final guest. Mrs. Norton, I would like you to meet Dr. Watson.
Doctor.
Madam?
Mrs. Norton is a close friend of the American ambassador and his wife.
Have we met before, Doctor?
Has such a pleasure been mine, madam, I should not have forgotten it, I can assure you.
Would Mr. Holmes prefer supper sent up to his room, do you suppose, Doctor?
Oh, I will inquire. Yeah. Holmes? Holmes!
The windows have not been forced, Watson, and none but a human fly could either gain entry or leave.
Holmes, you startled me.
There are no secret panels, no means of access save through that door. The clothes in the wardrobe befit those of a young prince.
Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
She is here.
Who?
The woman.
What?
Irene Adler, Mrs. Norton. She's downstairs. One of von Felsick's guests.
There is no mistake.
None?
Only 4 have ever bested me, Watson. 3 men and the woman.
At dinner, I scarcely noticed the excellent food and wine. On the surface, it was no more than a number of guests being entertained in grand style. But one or more of them must be guilty of a crime which could have inconceivable consequences. Lord Claremont, I noted, paid little heed to his lovely bride, while Baines was deep in some private conversation with Anton. Von Felsick wore a somewhat strained look, as well he might in the circumstances. The peace of nations was at stake. Holmes and Irene Adler, for such she will always be to me, resembled 2 fencers before the contest begins. Holmes' eyes were like ice, hers bright and mocking. Near a quarter of a century had passed, and yet she was as beautiful as ever. That woman of dubious and questionable memory who had once outwitted the great Sherlock Holmes. Lord Claremont obviously admired her. Or were they Confederates? Was that it?
Thank you. May I?
No, thank you.
I understood you had left England with your husband, never to return.
We made our way to America.
It was reported that you had not recovered from a serious illness.
The reports were exaggerated. As perhaps for those of your retirement.
I am a man of leisure.
And our widow.
Evidently, you were left well provided for.
Are you concerned about my welfare?
Your husband prospered.
He became a corporation lawyer in Washington. And later a close friend and advisor to the president.
No doubt you entertained extensively in Washington and acquired that considerable degree of political influence which a clever woman may exercise.
Oh, are you interested in politics?
I have been told that my knowledge of the subject is feeble.
I take leave to doubt that. Do you know Udo von Felsick well?
Oh, he is an interesting man. I look forward to knowing him better.
I'm sure that you will. If that is what you wish, Mr. Holmes.
Your acquaintance with him is no doubt lengthier than mine. You are already the better informed, I fancy.
Oh, it's later than I imagined. Fast money, politics, and Udo von Felsick. I wonder what's in your mind, Mr. Holmes, and whether Udo would much like it.
I cannot tell about that woman. I could not before, and I cannot now. We are told that an important personage, by implication a German prince, arrived at New Haven on Wednesday, was conveyed here, and disappeared from his room. I considered it likely that the account was a complete invention.
Why?
I have good reason, but I am not free to tell you what it is.
But if so, for what purpose?
If I could enlighten you as to that, I should not be here. I sent telegrams. The New Haven police, the customs, the port authorities, all of whom have been obliged to me in the past. The ferry arrived from Dieppe on time. A police constable describes the motor car and chauffeur to perfection. The customs officer distinctly recalls a young man muffled against the evening chill, of upright bearing and an air of distinction, who spoke in German. The same young man was greeted deferentially by the chauffeur, who drove away with him.
But if you harbored such grave suspicions, was it not unwise to have these telegrams sent here?
I expected them to be opened before they were handed to me, but I studied the envelopes under my glass, and I swear they have not been tampered with.
So all this must be true. Prince was taken from this room. But how?
Oh, that is easy. I knew how it could have been done immediately, but at that moment, I did not believe there had ever been anyone here.
You knew, but I mean, it's through the window. It's impossible. I mean, the door was locked from the inside.
The key rested there. In such a house, there would be more than one key to each room. A second key was used to open the door from the outside. The business done, it was locked again, but from the outside, and the key returned.
With the connivance of someone who knew the household arrangements well, such as one of the guests. And Irene Adler was here.
Yes, Irene Adler.
That night I slept fitfully. In the early hours, I awoke. I fancied I'd heard some unusual sound. Standing in some trees, dimly silhouetted in the moonlight, was a dark, sinister form. Flung on some clothes as rapidly as I could, grasped my stick for protection, and hurried outside. when I reached the trees, like the prince, he had vanished, or so it seemed. But a man might conceal himself behind any tree or bush, and I found myself starting at shadows. Determined not to give way to fancy, I continued my search for some trace of him, but without success. At last, wondering who it might have been, and shivering as much from my apprehensions as the night air, I returned to my bed. Next day, I was weary from lack of sleep. Perversely, Mr. Baines was in conversational mood.
Hang it all. We're civilized people. This is the 20th century. War's not the answer. We want trade with Germany, not war. I want to see my ships sail in the world, not rotting at the bottom of the sea. Damn it. The Germans aren't daft enough to go to war.
After all, England and Germany, our royal families are related. And this alliance with France, why, the French have been our enemies for centuries. What happens in Europe is no concern of ours. Dirty place, Europe. Except, of course, for Germany. I mean, they have exactly the same values as ourselves, the Germans.
It was easy to see why Mr. Baines and Lord Claremont were welcome guests, but I could not quite understand why they made me uncomfortable.
Show us a thing or two.
The young man is attentive?
Like father, like son. Udo was showing you over the house this morning. It also appeared you were questioning a number of the servants. I've seen you at work before, Mr. Holmes. Your purpose here interests me. I wonder what it can be this time.
You appear to be not in the least perturbed.
Oh, why should I be? Am I now to be questioned? If so, I should know what I'm suspected.
Madam, I will be frank. I am not a wholehearted admirer of womankind. Women are never to be entirely trusted. Not the best of them.
Nor the best of men, in my experience.
If you have nothing to conceal and speak the truth, I wish you no harm.
I doubt that you can harm me, Mr. Holmes.
Madam, I am never beaten twice. You appear to be a good friend of Graf von Felsig's. Do you choose not to explain?
I knew him slightly, long ago in Warsaw, where I met the then King of Bohemia, whom you may recall.
I do, madam. My inability to retrieve his compromising letters to you was one of my very few failures.
Like you, I dislike being beaten. The king had deceived me.
And when did you meet von Felsig again?
He sought me out when I returned to London.
For some particular reason?
I believe he enjoys my company, Mr. Holmes. Happily, most men don't share your views of women.
In America, it will be said, I understand, that von Felsig is engaged in lobbying for the German cause.
What other? He is a German.
I read recently that next Thursday a group of American senators interested in foreign affairs will arrive in London. Men von Felsig would like to lobby for American neutrality in case of war. Through you, I fancy, von Felsig will meet them.
If you know the answer, why pose the question? Is this the crime of which I'm suspected?
Oh, no, madam. If you wish to be used, along with men like Baines and Lord Claremont, that is your affair.
Used? I am an American by birth, Mr. Holmes. From America, Europe seems far off. Its national squabbles petty and unimportant.
America may change its mind in due course.
There are many Americans of German descent. Adler is a German name, Mr. Holmes. Though you already knew that.
To your knowledge, is pressing the German cause the the only reason for von Felsig's presence here in England?
What else could it be?
That is no answer.
And you? What is your purpose here? Tell me that.
I will tell you this, madam. Von Felsig is not entirely consistent. If Germany has no thought of war, what does American neutrality matter? Get dressed, Watson, and in silence.
So it was you I saw last night. Something woke me.
Perhaps a motor car returning. I'd heard it leave. I was waiting. The passenger stepped out and slipped into the house. Ah, again. There.
Who is it?
I cannot tell. Nor last night. It was a mere shadow. But the chauffeur remained behind in the garage.
No lights. Where can they be going at this hour?
Let us find out.
Holmes!
Step out, Watson.
We can't possibly follow a motor car on foot.
There is a footpath.
I trailed along behind Holmes while he continually urged me to make haste.
Make haste, Watson. Here.
At last, Holmes drew me to a stop, close to the edge of a chalk pit.
How did you know? Last night, the tires are white with chalk before the chauffeur hosed them clean at 3 in the morning.
But there must be many.
The car was gone but a short time. I calculated the maximum possible distance it could have traveled, and this was the only possible place. It is several miles by road, but my ordnance survey map revealed that footpath, a short cut across country.
A signal. To whom?
We shall see.
Building. Some kind of mechanical activity.
Yes, we must try to get down.
What is it?
Wait there. If I call out, do not reply. And do not move.
But what?
Do not move. Here, Watson. Follow me inside. Quickly, man. Silence for your life.
Der große Detektiv und der Doktor haben sich endlich zur Ruhe gesetzt.
The engine was merely a pump left running. The signal was intended to lure us on, and I took it like any innocent. In this case, I have committed one blunder after another. Watson, I don't quite know what to do, and I should value your advice. Let me expound.
Pray do, sir.
Now, one thing is certain. This whole business is a fraud, concocted only to entice me to this house.
For what purpose?
Well, to bring about my death tonight or some other night.
But no one could possibly anticipate that you would hear the car in dead of night, that you would deduce where it had been, or that you would then find your way there.
On the contrary, Watson, the trail was carefully laid in the confident expectation that I would follow it. My methods and my infernal curiosity have been accurately recorded, Doctor. Someone of evil intent has studied them carefully.
But why should this someone go to such lengths? I mean, why not a bullet or a knife? Here in this room or in the grounds?
Simple murder would not do. The Home Secretary knows I am here. Now, it had to appear to be some inexplicable accident.
And the Prince?
What a device to induce the Home Secretary to press the case upon me, and so bring me here.
But someone arrived in New Haven. The telegrams.
Yes. Someone arrived at New Haven.
Who?
Watson, there is someone I wish to speak to.
Well, at this hour? No one will be awake.
The young gentleman I have in mind will be up and about. Good morning, young fellow.
Morning, sir.
If it's not too much trouble, I would like my boots.
I've just finished them, sir.
You know which are mine?
I know them all, sir. Those are the master's, those his lordship's.
Here's a test for you. A shilling, you cannot tell me to whom these belong.
That's easy, sir.
Clothes are one thing, Doctor. Boots another. A man accustomed to handmade boots wears his own. The boot boy recognized them at once. They belong to Von Pelzig's son, Anton. Would you mind helping me pack, Watson?
Yes, of course. You believe that he masqueraded as the Prince?
I know he did.
But the Prince, or whoever it was, arrived from France.
All that was necessary was for Anton to catch the first train to London last Wednesday on some business pretext. From there, he caught another train to New Haven in ample time to join the ferry to Dieppe. It is only a 5-hour crossing. That night, he was back in New Haven and taking care to speak German, that he might be remembered.
So, it is Anton who is responsible for this diabolical plot.
Well, Anton is his father's instrument.
You were right. But is there yet sufficient proof of the crime?
Which crime?
Which crime? Holmes, they tried to murder you.
The reason is what matters, not the attempt. As to that, the crime they fear I might uncover was not committed here. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Holmes. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
You are leaving?
At once for Bristol.
Bristol?
In search of the prince.
You have news of him?
This is not the time for details. I shall enlighten you as to the full truth of the matter in due course. Make haste, Watson. Our chauffeur has ensured that we have indeed caught this train. We're on time. Good.
In a fast car like that, he could reach Bristol before a slow train like this. If we are truly going to Bristol.
At the third stop, if I read my Bradshaw all right, we can just catch the flyer. Non-stop to London.
The rest of our luggage.
Leave it. This will suffice.
No. My suit, my evening clothes.
Apply to the Lost Property Office. Make haste, Watson.
Udo told me you caught the train to Bristol.
Be so kind as to explain your presence, madam.
I received a letter this morning. I chose to regard it as a summons to London. Mr. Baines was so good as to offer his Rolls Royce. Halfway to the station, I changed my mind in favor of the flyer.
Your reasons, madam?
Before your sudden departure, I overheard part of Udo's instructions to his chauffeur.
To reach Bristol first and waylay us there.
Parked in the station yard we have just left is the Mercedes. I just caught sight of a man joining the next carriage. He was bareheaded. He wore a topcoat over what I fancied was a chauffeur's uniform.
He reads me like a book, Watson. As do you, madam. Although I wonder why you have gone to so much trouble. You have not previously shown much inclination to assist me.
You refused to explain your purpose. You treated me with suspicion. I found your attitude offensive. That's true. But I have no reason to wish you dead, Mr. Holmes. Udo von Felsick does. Why, I don't know.
That slow train was infernally grimy. I must wash.
Mr. Holmes, a little grime can wait. Your life is in danger.
I suggest you find a seat at the front of the train and remain there until we reach London.
I prefer to remain here.
And I would prefer you did not.
In my presence, nothing will happen.
That may or may not be so, but if you're seen with us now, I cannot answer for your subsequent safety.
I am in the habit of making my own decisions, Mr. Holmes.
Madam, I would not be surprised to learn that you are a suffragette. Kindly, on this single occasion, do as I ask. Please.
was to be an attack, it would be now.
I would have preferred the opportunity to question the fellow, Doctor.
Mr. Holmes.
He asked me to convey his profound thanks.
But where is he? I've been waiting for him.
He went out in advance. You must have missed him. You have a suite at the Langham, I believe. It is on the way. I shall engage a cab.
Oh, thank you.
May I?
Thank you.
Alfred Coombs.
The one who saw demons when in drink.
Poor fellow. Slaughtered like an animal.
A fair description, Doctor. His throat cut as cleanly as a butcher might.
The weapon, clues of any kind?
Oh, none, sir. I telephoned at once, but Mrs. Hudson did not know where you were.
Killed after speaking to me.
You think that may be the reason? His words read like meaningless raving. Unless something was omitted from the report you sent to me.
Nothing was omitted, MacDonald.
Holmes shut himself away. I scarcely saw him for 24 hours. I feared another attempt on his life. Whenever the doorbell rang, I was ready, my revolver to hand. No one asked to see him. Each caller was innocent, but I maintained my vigil. It was Holmes's final search for inspiration, his eternal last resort. There was something despairing, almost frantic in the sound. My heart filled with compassion for my old friend. Suddenly, the gaslight began to fade. I stared at the lamps, fearing I knew not what. But it was only a drop in pressure, and they soon came back to full strength.
Watson! Watson! It must be here. I keep everything.
Can I help?
A man should keep his brain stocked with all the knowledge he's likely to use, and the rest he can keep handy where he can get at it. But where the devil is the old notebook I need?
Which one?
It's a red one.
Red one. This is it.
Oh, well done, Watson. Now I want the maps.
showing the path of London's public utilities.
Public utilities. They're classified under district.
Whitechapel, of course.
Whitechapel.
Here it is. The subject of Von Pelzic's lecture. I thought as much. But my head is too crammed, I wasn't certain. The properties of non-ferrous elements with added toxic compounds.
Is this the one?
That's water and sewage. I want the gas mains as well.
Gas mains.
Gas mains.
Gas.
Their suggested application in the extermination of vermin. Vermin. If only I had penetrated the veil. But at the time there was no reason.
I think...
Yes.
Hold that open.
When you have eliminated the impossible, Watson, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Remain here, within earshot of the telephone, if you please.
Where are you going?
This may take some little time. Do nothing unless you hear from me. Is that clear?
When will you return?
Should I send for you, there may be some little danger. So kindly put your service revolver in your pocket.
That night, he did not return. Suppose something had happened to him. Perhaps I should telephone MacDonald. But Holmes had urged me to do nothing, and he never spoke lightly. I determined to wait until night came. Despite my apprehensions, I dozed off. With a start, I woke. It was late. I feared the worst. Surely it was time to inform the police that Holmes was missing.
Holmes?
Memorizing Holmes's instructions, I hastened to follow. Having discharged my cab, I made my way towards our meeting place.
Holmes! Holmes! What? You spoiled everything. Calling my name like that. You're strangling me.
What now?
Come.
Why the disguise?
What you need to know. The evidence was there from the very beginning. And like the veriest fool, I ignored it. That first night when we spoke to Alfred Coombs, we heard it.
What? I heard nothing.
Beer barrels being delivered to a public house which has been closed for months. There have been 3 more deliveries in the last 24 hours, beer barrel after barrel. Were it indeed beer?
What else could those barrels contain if not beer?
I believe I know. Not a sound. We must go down.
It's empty. Nothing but dust and rubbish. Holmes, shh. Are you positive?
Barrels by the dozen. They've been moved already. Help me search for a concealed entrance. No, it'll be in this wall.
There's nothing, Holmes. Just solid brick.
There must be. Ah, do you see, Watson? No dust. Perhaps a handhold. Balanced and well oiled, lined with steel. It forms a seal. This is a great, if deadly, enterprise, Watson. It's an old abandoned sewer, linked with others which they have utilized. It's ventilation. Above is the grating. There must have been more than one accident. In the first, I fancy, one of their own fellows was killed. They disposed of him in the Thames. And the proof lies beyond that door. Come. Again sealed. Holmes, what in the name of God lies beyond it? More accurately, what in the name of the devil, Doctor? Your handkerchief. Breathe as little as possible.
Eine Tür! Eindringlinge! Auftreten! Auftreten! Alles dicht machen! Watson! Alle Mann raus! Schnell!
There is no need for that, Watson.
But they...
Do come along, Watson. There's a good fellow. Now, how badly are you hurt?
Oh, a mere scratch, Holmes. Nothing to compare with that Jezal bullet at the fatal battle of my wand.
You know, quite so, Watson, quite so.
I can still use this.
Good. Put it away.
Holmes, you've got to go back. It's imperative. Don't you understand? Holmes!
Up you come. That's right.
Up. They must have an escape route. They can get away.
Provided the Admirable MacDonald has followed his instructions to the letter, I rather think not. And he has, Doctor. Here he is now.
There. Come. Quick. Keep moving. Mr. Holmes.
The crude poison gas was delivered to the public house in modified, specially sealed beer barrels. There, it was treated to render it even more toxic and pumped into cylinders under pressure. These were conveyed to the base of the nearby gasometer. The tunnel had been extended and connected to the main supply.
Holmes, they detained me in hospital, remember? I'm still not completely au fait.
Well, most houses in London are still lit by gas. The poison gas would have been fed in under pressure from the normal supply into the homes of the unprotected population.
The number of deaths would have been appalling.
This was to be done now, in time of peace?
The devices were to be left in place to be activated by, as it were, remote control when war came.
How?
Now, this was to be the final connection to the main pipe. You will see a glass membrane has been inserted.
Now, that glass is strong enough to withstand ordinary vibration, but any excessive movement
caused by an explosion, for instance, would shatter it and allow the poison gas to enter the domestic supply.
Explosion. A bomb planted by an enemy agent.
More likely bombs dropped from Graf von Zeppelin's huge new airships.
Terrible. Terrible. And von Felsig, is he...
Von Felsig made his escape, Doctor.
We may not have heard the last of poison gas, I fear.
Ghastly. But there's one thing I cannot grasp. How did MacDonald know where to wait?
There could be only one reason for von Felsig's attempt on my life. My interrupted case here in London. When I began to discern the truth of that, I recalled the unknown fellow found in the Thames.
One of theirs, you said. Killed in some accident by the poison gas.
Like the later two victims. Now, close to where he was found was a sewer outfall. I noticed that sewer ran close to the old tunnel I suspected. Now, his body was thrown from that sewer outfall, but by some chance became lodged under the wharf. That sewer was their obvious means of escape, should they be detected.
So you deliberately sought to drive them out while Mr. Mack and his men waited. But the sewer, Holmes, It was only a guess. You couldn't possibly have known for certain.
I never indulge in mere guesswork, Watson. You should know that by now. I had inspected the sewer outfall before instructing MacDonald. Moored nearby was a sturdy seagoing boat registered in Germany.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Holmes, but this letter, delivered by hand, addressed to Sherlock Holmes, Esquire.
It would be, Mrs. Hudson. I live here. Thank you. Well, put it down somewhere, please.
Mr. Holmes, it carries the royal crest.
Thank you.
Well, this is indeed a signal honor, Holmes.